حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني حور العين تناديني فدعيني أماه دعيني لتبكي دموعك يا أمي عن دربي لا لن تثنيني.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let's make dua inshallah. We will start. اللهم امين اللهم انت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والاكرام. اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الآخرة حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Inshallah, we're going to continue our topic Islam and Muslims in the modern world and challenges faced by our youth in modern societies. Tonight, inshallah, we want to discuss a new topic and a new aspect of this area of challenges, and that is isolation, depression, and anxiety that is affecting our youths. This is one of the greatest challenge I could say that is posed to our youths in comparison to the amount of various type of challenges that are there before our youths. And if we ask ourselves, what is this idea of discussing isolation or depression or anxiety? These are amongst mental illnesses. Depression is a mental problem. Isolation is also is common as a side effect from a mental issue. And anxiety is also an extent that comes out of a mental issue. So we have to ask ourselves, whether or not, when we look at what is mentioned here, what is really causing it in our society. Because if we look at society today, there are many, many, many millions and millions of people in the world. I don't know, 100,000, 200,000, millions of people are actually suffering from mental depression, mental illness. And it is increasing at an alarming rate, not just amongst old people, but it's affecting young people. So this is something that we have to discuss and come to an understanding as to why and what is causing the mental dangers that we see in our society today. And amongst these things we have to acknowledge and recognize here is that, let's look at what is mentioned here for a challenge in our society. Our society is in the throes of virtual an epidemic of depression. It is on that verge of virtual epidemic depression. The numbers are quite staggering. More than 20% of the North American population will or would have experienced at least one episode of what we refer to as clinical depression. Something would have affected them. I'm talking about a percentage of 20%. It's 20% of that. You're talking millions. We're not talking just a small number. And that is only in North America that survey have been done to recognize that there is this level of sickness, mental sickness. Many of us live dull lives, somewhat robotic in nature, and devoid of deeper meaning and purpose of life. Our lives often become visionless and passionless. We live in an intensely competitive culture that rewards achievement and success. Our identity and esteem becomes reflection of these external markers and achievement. Our pursuit of happiness and well-being become terribly misdirected. The demands of our intensely and neurotically driven culture strain of emotional and psychological balance well beyond its disenchanted and isolated situation. When this occurs, we tend to honor and seek material acquisition as the cost of devoting ourselves to intimate and loving relationship with others and ourselves. People that thrive in loving relationship don't typically feel depressed. Depression is systematic to or of feeling isolated and cut off. Now, I just give you the definition basically of what society is made up of, and understanding this is important. You live in a society today in such a situation where everybody looking at you to be successful when you have certain material gains. And these material gains is the objective of your life. Because if you don't belong there, in that particular group, then you cannot be amongst them. Even in our own society today, we have thing called class. In our class, we have what? Middle class people. You have middle class, they say the middle class and the upper class. I mean, we use a percentage for them nowadays. No, we ain't going to the percentage, but you understand what is happening. What is the psyche of the society? The thinking, the psychological problem. So in other words, it's a whole society. You could identify yourself in a particular grouping and belonging. This is a sickness that is affecting our society. What is common amongst everyone in this country? What is one common thing amongst all of us who live here? Yeah. That is a natural phenomenon for the whole world. You need a visa to get out. That coming anyhow. SubhanAllah. That is sure. But what is common amongst all of us here in Trinidad is that we are all citizens. Majority, 99% of us are citizens of this country. We are all what? What we call ourselves Trinbagonians, as you say, born in Trinidad and born in Tobago, and we call ourselves one. We're supposed to be one, isn't that so? Because that is what we are all alleged in the sense of following a particular creed and particular anthem, or we say a particular law, in terms of showing that there's some relationship with us. But when it comes down to the psyche and the thinking of the people who live in that environment, it is not so. The fact is that we think along racial lines. There are people who think along racial lines, and that affects their psyche because there are certain people, when you see them, the only thing that they can talk is race. That's the only thing in their psyche. So in other words, their mind is fixed on the psyche of race. There are people whose mind, because they fall in a little lower class, as we normally call it here, they just talk about everybody in the other upper class as a seat in society and knock them all the way. So the mental frame of mind is also affected based on the class. Then there's a group of people in the middle who say, well, they're taking away giving me all the tax, making me take all the burden, and we are feeling like we're the worst set of people now. Once a time we was enjoying a better life, now we come and enjoying a worse life. So what is affecting their mind? What it is determine their thinking like this? What is it? It is what status they have, what amount of money they have, what kind of house they could have, what kind of car they could drive, what kind of job the children could have. This is the psyche and the thinking that is affecting society. Because if you cannot fit in that class, or people cannot see you there, then you don't belong. But the mentality of the country and the leaders on top tell you that all are we is one. We are all Trinidadians. But you know that's the same psyche in the world? Because the entire world is what? 2 world, 3 world, 4 world? The entire world is only what? 1 world. It's only 1 world. And what occupies the leadership of the world? Only human beings. Before the governing of the world and the psyche of what we see today that is affecting us the most is that today the world has now become a situation where we call ourselves countries, states, land. We own this piece and this is ours and that is ours. So in each state, the people are recognized as being, all right, well, I am a American, I'm a British, I'm a French, I'm a whatever you call yourself, from different parts of the world. And now you have to go to America, you have to have a visa. But people who live in America, they feel, some of them in their same class and race, they feel isolated within the same community they live in. The fact is that we know within the last 100 years that there was what? a black power movement just so the blacks get some rights in America, in European countries. But the fact is that they're all what? Some say Americans, isn't that so? But within themselves, there's what? A sickness in the mind, in the psyche, in the thinking. So there is a problem. There is a problem in our society that we are not seeing, that people have started to do what Allah tells us not to do, even amongst ourselves as human beings. The fact is that before everything else, we are human beings. We are human beings. And in the world, when we see this happen, there's so many transition and transformation and changes that is happening, that such changes that happen currently is that to travel the world, people put restriction on you. What happens to one country that feels that they are restricted to travel to a particular next country? How the people of that country will feel? They'll feel inferior. They will feel as though they can't reach that level as yet. Right? That's what's going to happen. Or that happens actually. So certain people travel to a particular place, they get frightened, they get scared. Certain things happen. What is happening to their psyche, their thinking? So they might be innocent as innocent can be, but there is a fear when they would travel. Because there is also stereotyping. What is happening? This is the nature of psyche in the minds of the people that is causing a mental problem. We're not seeing it as a mental problem. You say, well, I know a mental problem. But this is one of the cultural issue and the issue amongst the human beings today that is leading people in a life of frustration. A life of frustration because you have to match a certain level to live in. So society today is facing this level of depression because many people feel left back. Many people, and that's one aspect, just looking at the people alone. The other aspect is if you cannot meet the demands of society. What do you fall along to be when you can't meet the demands of society? A vagrant. A vagrant. There is nothing left in your life except being a vagrant. That's what they will call you. You have no use. And even in our society, people don't even look at the vagrant as having a life. That they don't really exist. And they look for that basically, that we say. They give up their life. That's basically what they choose to do that. Right? Because probably drugs they're on and probably because of some other thing. But in the psyche of the people, and that's what's happening, in the psyche of all of us, what is happening? We no longer consider human beings to be a human being. And we treat each other like this. We treat each other like this. So when society, when you cannot cope with the demands of the society that wants you to be like this, in other words, you are programmed. We are all programmed to actually serve something, some function in this world. Some function in this world. And if you cannot meet that demand, and someday to come in your life, you will reach an age when you cannot fulfill that demand. And what do they do with you? You go and somebody else fill that spot. What happened to the mind of this individual after he leaves that job? Do you know when people leave jobs, sometimes they die not too long after? You know why? Because they don't know what to do with life. They were programmed. They don't understand that life had something in it. So they get lost into something else. They lost. Their programmed mind, their psyche has changed. That is affecting our society for even the old people. Today it has happened at a younger rate. Younger children are suffering from these episodes of mental destruction and mental disorder because of what is happening to them. What do you think is affecting them today most that they become mentally challenged? Besides drugs, because drugs is a big challenge for them already. That is causing a mental problem. But what is more of a danger to them today that we never had? Today, they are bombarded by media. Today, the bombardment from media is way, 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 way greater. In other words, we probably would watch a TV show for once or twice a week or a special day for the week. But you know how much shows they watch a day? You know how much media and phone they take on a day? We have any idea how much they start from the night, whole night, into the day and the entire day if they get a chance. And you know how much games they would play? You think 1 hour, 2 hours? Hours would pass and they're still playing game. Ask ourselves, in the psyche and in the minds of these young people, what is eating away their brains? Is our brains designed for that? Are the brains of our children designed for that programming that is happening right now? It is not. It is not designed for that. So what do we expect to come out of them in the shortest possible time? There will be a mental disorder. We are not seeing it like that. We are not seeing it like that. And many types of businesses and so on that deals with these types of software that sell these things to our children, and the media that deals with this, they will deny this down to the last. They'll find any kind of scientific type of what? Research that doesn't cause so much harm. But the fact is that they know that proven as well that there are many issues coming out of these challenges when our children are faced with it. So the disorder and the challenge comes with that. And let's ask ourselves, what is really this challenge that we face when it comes to mental health and sickness? What does Islam tell us? What is the real core factor that is affecting mental health? Because first we have to understand, what is mental health? If a person goes mad and you came to the hospital, who has to treat his mental health case? Do you think that when you go in there, you see some vein burst, or you see some kind of problem that is discovered in the mind that causes this person to go mad? No. It's nothing like that. Because there are doctors that are trained who are called neurologists who deal with damage to the brain, or cancer in your head, or some clot in your head, or some kind of damage you get in your brain. They will fix the body of the problem. But if their person is mad, the neurologist can't do nothing because the brain function is perfectly normal. It looks perfectly good. Nothing is wrong with it. So he has no place there. So there's a psychologist who tells you that there's something wrong otherwise. There is something wrong otherwise. That the brain is perfectly looking good, but yet the person operating like he dead. Like he don't have no life. Like he doesn't want to function anymore. And doesn't do anything at all. As though he wants to just go one side and hide. And he wants to cry. And he feels like he wants to commit suicide. And they feel like this. What? And your brain is perfectly healthy? What is really causing it? And that is an important part of a Muslim life. We might feel like, well, what are we talking about here? Why talk about this here? But this is Islam. Islam have a solution for every problem. The fact is that we have moved away from the understanding of what Islam tells us about mental health. We didn't understand what is mental health. But if we look at a computer, for instance, a computer has two parts functional. One, a computer functions with its mainframe and the processors and all the peripherals that you call it, all those that make the components of the computer to function. So if the power supply goes bad, the computer will function. The person goes now and says, well, he's sure that is the problem. But there's also a part called the operation part, the software part. And if you as an individual don't understand the difference between the peripherals and the parts that makes the component that makes up the computer, as opposed to the software that operates the system, then you won't understand. So you might want to beat up the computer when it's already what? A problem with the software. And you say, well, listen, we can go to hit it too hard, Lash. So you solve the problem. And then after you get to realize, by beating it up now, you damage what? A hardware or a peripheral that really supposed to be functioning. So now you end up with a double problem. One, the part goes bad, so it started malfunction because the part damaged now. And the next part is the software gone bad. So two things happen at one time. So it's gone in a total chaotic state. A person can go mad just like that. When the physical being is affected, and the operational function that is generally there for reasoning and thinking and understanding and the senses and the reality of it, it's also bad because the environment is bad, then this person will totally malfunction. That's why when they say prisoners, when you put people in prison, the environment even in prison makes the prisoner more violent. Because the people in there and the environment that there is only feeding into violence. So they become more violent. the objective of prisoner remand was supposed to actually reform an individual. But even when a prisoner comes out from reformation in the prison, we still call that man what? Prisoner. He's a jailer. because we know him to be a particular person like that, so the stereotyping is also there. So he can never even come out of prison, even when he's out of prison. He's still in prison. Because society has made him into that. That is the mentality and the sick system that is existing amongst us. So you see how far this problem is? This problem is not a simple problem. But this problem is transforming our society. And we have become so far brainwashed into a system of thinking that sometimes people are mad and they don't know they're mad. They behave mad and they don't even know that they are mad. Because that is not the natural behavior of a human being. Do you understand how dangerous it is? So a person can be existing as a human being but does not understand what it means to be a human being. And that is by the nature of what happens around us. So there are three factors that can affect that person while they are in this state. One, it could be the natural biological stature of the individual. The types of food you eat could affect your thinking. The drugs you take, medicine-wise, can affect your thinking. You know that some people take some drugs and I talk about the haram drugs now. I talk about even the medical drugs that people give you over the counter. Could send you off. It could cause different types of side effects, and they will tell you about it. So biology could cause your mind to go haywire. Right? Get you nervous. You can't sleep, your heart starts to race off and you start to get frightened. And when you start to get frightened, you start to feel in a different kind of mood and you don't want to be like that anymore. All affecting what? From just using some drugs. And that is part of Islam as well, because we have to know what Islam tells us when it comes to that. Now, there's another aspect that affects us in our thinking, and that deals with our psychological nature. What is our psychological nature? The environment that we live in, for example, you are a person who are poor, and every time somebody come by your house, they just insult your mother and your father. You know what I'm talking about? Or you always do something, eh? Why are you not going to do something for their life? Imagine this child is hearing this adult telling his parents that they what? Good for nothing. What do you expect this child to look at this individual and say to this child, this adult, this teenager, this child, sees his parents being rebuked and abused by this person or someone who comes to his house? Could this child go and face that person? What has happened to that mind in that child? And this is something normal. Is that so? That is something normal in society. And that is not part of our deen. Islam tells us how we don't even look at who is what? High up, low down, or any side, any color, any race. But believe me, amongst our own Muslims, that's a problem. That is a problem. And we don't see the harm and the danger that we are putting our children through. That some of these children grow up to be such that they even hate to be Muslims because of the treatment their own parents get from Muslims. So in the environment, psychologically, you're affecting the mind of the people and the children that live in your community. Sometimes people come to the masjid and they feel psychology because how you treat them on the outside. When they come to the masjid, they have to be quiet and they can't talk to nobody and they shouldn't do anything. Because they feel they'll get what? Abused. And it affects them where? So they say, if I had to come here and get that, better I stay out and they start to refrain and hide away. Psychologically, it affects their environment, their school environment. If a child being bullied in school is the next problem. The social environment, that bullying in the school. A young person going through bullying becomes a person that can commit suicide in your own house. Your own daughter, your own son, you're being bullied in school. And if you as a parent don't do anything about it and go and stand up in school as a real father and a real mother, you could have a child who has the tendency of committing suicide. Now, they don't say what that has to do with Islam. That has everything to do with parenting. That has everything to do with parenting and knowing that your child is yours and you have to seek that child's interest and protect that child. You do that for that child will look up to you for the rest of your life. Because you do something for that child. But you ignore the child and say, well, go and beat him up now. You say, go and beat him up. You can't defend yourself. What you telling your child? Don't depend on me. Look for somebody else. So you go by the drug man, say a thief at 10,000 for father, you go fix that fella for me, right? You understand? Because he can't deal with it, the father can't do it, so take a 10,000 the father and fix it up. That is the reality of what social ills in our society are. That is what is affecting us socially. And this disadvantage that they feel combined together, so the biological, so one, the eating food that is causing a what? A mental problem. The environment, that the psychology that has been played out to them in the environment is also pushing them away. And at the same time, they've been what? Pressured socially as well. So they cannot associate, they cannot belong. When 3 of these things, or 2 or 1 of these things come to your mind, you are actually playing into the psyche, into the mental, depression. You're staying away, you're going to have isolation, you're going to have anxiety. This person sees this person, and this person sees this person, you get frightened one time. Blood pressure to go up, heart start to beat fast, start to get vexed one time. You know that people like that, once you see them, your whole mentality, your whole mind frame change one time. There are people, once you see them, you either get frightened, you get vexed, but he had to come here too. What is that boy? What he had to come here for? Because it plays in your mind. It plays in your mind. What does that have to do with Islam? Because we are living here in an environment that we as Muslims have an opportunity to make a change for our own selves firstly, and to make a change in the environment that we live. It's important to understand that. So what I built here was for you to understand what our youths are facing, what we ourselves are facing, and what the environment is here challenging us with. Just that thinking alone. And if we cannot even see that this is a problem, well then we really sink down in a deep hole. Because if you can say, well, I have no problem, I good. You know, people can say, me have no problem. You see no problem in me? No, me see no problem in you. Because you're part of the big problem. So it makes a difference. In other words, the whole environment is sick. If you walk into a street and everybody using drugs, illegal drugs now, everybody smoking marijuana or using some kind of illegal cocaine or something inside there, and you go and talk to them and say, well, stop now. You see nothing wrong with me? Or? The whole village, them normal. Because they're accustomed for all of them to what? Use drugs. So nothing wrong with their mind. All of them sick. If the whole community, the whole place using alcohol and everybody drinking, that is normal. Them are sick. But the doctors say they're sick, you know. But that is normal. A mental condition that has derived that even though they are sick, they still say they're not sick. Because this society has trained them to think like this. If we can identify this, if doctors can identify that these things that cause mental illness and depression and cause people to be like this, you know what they do? In North America and certain European countries, when a person is convicted for drug use, you think they just throw them in jail and lock them up over there? No, they take them before the judge. The judge will do a case with that person, study whether this person needs to just go behind bars or there's room for rehabilitation. So they will send them for a challenge to get rehabilitation. And that is important. A person needs to be rehabilitated first. But the first thing we do is just throw them in jail and leave them right there. So it's the mentality, because they understand that these people are sick. They need help. Locking up and solving their problem. And there's so many of them who are like this and they are dying out of this sickness. This is the nature of what is happening before us mentally. So even the people who are in law understand that there are people like that. They understand that people are sick up here because of these drugs, because of all these different types of things. So the society today is contributing to the mental illness in a big way, in a tremendous amount, that so much is being pushed down into our lives today, that if we are functioning, 100% mad, we're close by or we're nearby. When I say mad, you might not see it, because you feel you're functioning real good. Right? You feel you're functioning good, but really and truly, are we? really functioning as we should function as human beings? And how do we assess that? And how do we acknowledge that? The first and foremost aspect is that let us understand what is happening in the derivative or the understanding what happens to our life. For example, in our drive to live a good life, this is what we want. Everybody wants a good life. And they're going to sell you an appliance, you'll get a good life. You know what is the outcome of this flood in Trinidad today? What is the most thing people complain about? What a loss. I lost everything. But you know what they didn't check? They're still breathing. They could still say they lost everything. They didn't realize that they would have life. Not that we don't sympathize with their loss, but at least be grateful that Allah, the Creator, the God Almighty, spare your life. It's a test. You could lose everything. You know, a question is actually posed like that. If it comes to leaving your house and running because of this danger, would you stay or run? Some people say they would stay. They want to protect their things. They don't even value their own life. What is more important? What is in their mind? The whole environment, they lost everything and they have not seen that they have life yet. They have not seen that they have life. So it tells us that the majority, let's say, most of everybody, I mean, that even the media is focusing on what? What they lost. Not the fact that what we could do to better our lives, what we could do to change the environment, what we could do to change and make the community a better place. But everybody wants now a grant and they want this. I ain't saying that you shouldn't give, but what I'm saying is, what is happening over here? What will be the end result when this happens? You know, what will be the end result? Have we actually changed the mentality and the thinking of these individuals and ourselves? No, we didn't. We didn't do that by this action. What should have been done was a better approach to how to deal with our issues in our society. So we have to assess and know that our environment that we are living in, what the condition is of every individual. Not that we don't have a desire for things to do. I'm not saying that I'm a saint or something and I don't sleep in a bed or anything. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about what is in the psyche and the thinking of all of us. But when we see this happen, what do we do? So our drive is to live a good life. That's what we want. We want to live a good life. We want to be looking good. We want to be looking good in society. But that drive to live a good life, we typically isolate ourselves from the relationship that might nourish us. In other words, that is sacrifice of our own spouse at times. It happens. You know why many in relationships in Trinidad, husband kill wife and wife get somebody to kill the husband? It's because the husband and wife, they have different world, a life to live. But what is being affected up here? We're not seeing it. We're not seeing it. But when they trip, and where's called the word? They trip. What leads you to trip? Did you think it's just trip just so? Is the environment that has led you to that position that your mind gone off. And the next step from that is to trip and do what you want. That is not what we are about. A society that is living in such an environment is actually living in an environment of being mentally sick. Let's just say, do we only have one case like that in a year? So we say that I sue this situation. In all the years, only one case happened. You think that happens so? 10, 20, 50 for the year. And these are small little country. You know much in other parts of the world how much happened? By the hundreds of thousands. By the hundreds of thousands of cases take place. It's a mental case. Depression, isolation that is affecting us, and the anxiety that comes into a person when these things happen. So even in that relationship that you should nourish, you ignore it for some affairs of this world. Mentally, it's going to affect us. We don't see as human beings what is happening to us. And it goes to the point that we say, the intimate and loving relationships have become somewhat marginalized and have lost value in our very hurried life. Today we have a sickness in our society. We have our husband and our wife working in a house. They're working together to achieve what? To build a house and to get their cars and to put everything together. And you know when trouble starts? and husband and wife have problems, they become mentally sick, depression. She's soaking her head with all kind of things that catch over. You think you go soak your head and solve the problem? You go soak your head with any kind of liquid you want, you still ain't going to solve the problem. Because the problem is not that. But that's the society that we live in today that has led us into an environment that it is very difficult to even survive that. So we are not seeing it, but we are actually destroying relationships and not making it virtually beneficial. So you only see yourself, well, I contributing and you contributing, and we billing, but we are billing our relationship. We are billing our married life. We only billing what we want materially. So the relationship has strained mentally, and the purpose for it has gone. And that has caused so many people who are young to find their marriages in a state of being wrecked. And our therapeutic community attaches labels such as dysfunctional to people and families. You see what I'm arguing every time dysfunctional? They don't know what to do in life. So we call it a dysfunctional family. So, because what is a functional family if you say them dysfunctional? Everybody working, going to school and bringing home money and doing this and doing that, and that's a functional family? No, that's a slave family. That's a family belong to a slave. They're really functional yet. They're actually slaving to do something because you're actually training your child into a different direction. You yourself is working and educating your child in a particular direction, which we will come to and discuss from an Islamic perspective, but it's just to draw the understanding of what is happening before us. People are not dysfunctional. We are not dysfunctional in a human being. We are made to do actually things. If you throw something in the air and it falls towards your face, you say, so what you would do? You must react. You must put something to block your face. You would use your hands. You will do something. Because we have a quality within us that we are not dysfunctional. That's not part of a human being. Social systems, like what we see around us, are the social systems, the things that are put in place in our society for us to function in, is what is affecting us. Today, family life has become the worst situation ever because of the fact that children go to school, finish school at a particular time, then spend half the night or 3/4 of the time in what? Studying and finishing. As they finish that, they go on the phone, and that's the rest of the night. And the next morning, they leave early and they go on again. You're not seeing them until the weekend. And when the weekend comes, they're still inside the room and they're lost. What type of family social life is that? And society is continuously building in our children's life a life of gaming and phoning and all the different types of things that occupy our children's life away from family real lifetime. So if social environment and the social system is affecting the culture and the nature of what human beings should be, and they're putting us in that particular bracket, it's because some people is making money while other people is losing in the society. And that is affecting us. That is affecting us, and we can't even control that. We can't even control these little small gadgets that is taking away family life. The father and the mother don't even have time because even the boss and you have to work all right, you can't come home and spend no time here. Your job, everything. So your whole life, you don't even have time as a family to function. I'm not saying you can't work or do your work, but what I'm saying is that when we have a society that cannot even spend one good day together, and if you have one day, just run away to the beach, and even tired after that, you cannot, like, you're done. That is the end of your life. Whole day fixing and cleaning, doing this, working. What life do we have really? What is the purpose of life? And when you go to someone and say, well, come to the masjid now, man. Nobody's only there to clean house. This is only there to clean the house. The house needs cleaning. Your inside don't need cleaning. Your heart don't need cleaning. Your mind don't need cleaning. Your whole structure is affected. Your whole body is crumbling. Your whole mental psyche is crumbling. And you're not seeing that, but you're seeing some bricks, wall, paint, bed, clothes, them things need fixing. Those are the things need fixing. And the real things that need fixing are not really fixed. So looking at it, inshallah, we have to continue this in the next session, but understanding this, is that when we look at what is happening before us, this condition that we live in and the environment that we live in, if we don't fix it, guarantee you, 20, 30 years from now, we'll be living in a worse off chaotic state because the environment is not benefiting us. And I'm not talking about environment like trees and plants and road, you know. I'm talking about the mentality of the people that we live around will not see people for being people. And in fact, they are doing that already today. They're not seeing people as being people. Or what is the function and purpose of human beings. So if we could understand from one country to the next country, and within our own self, we talk about class, and we are all within one, we all are with Trinidad, and even if you go to a poor man, all talking with Trini. But at the end of the day, when we finish with that, you go your way, I go my way. You live your life, I live my life. And that's what life is about. For people, then we are really in a really sad state. Inshallah, we will understand from the next session, inshallah, and we'll continue to discuss it. But more importantly, bear this in mind. The Quran, it tells us, La taqtulu awladakum khashyata imlaq. Do not kill your children for the fear of poverty. And that's a very powerful verse. We'll discuss it in the next session, inshallah. Let's make dua and close. Allahumma ameen. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل على سيدنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير فسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
إني ألقى الإناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات. إني ألقى الإناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات. إني ألقى الإناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع